Day with SSJ was presented by Walker Medical Linen Services, locally owned and operated, and HLAC certified, meeting the highest industry standards. Walker has partnerships with hospitals, surgery centers, and medical clinics in and around the metro area. Walker Medical Linen Services in Kansas City and online at walkermls.com.
Are you ready for some football?
Lions, 49ers.
Third down and 12 for the Lions. For the 49ers, 42. This is the best third down team in the NFL. Trips left, two to the right for Goff in that shimmering gray helmet. He takes the snap. He throws it far side. They'll pitch it back off the catch. Williams running down the sideline. Another trick play for the Lions. The circus travels. It's a touchdown. Jamison Williams. Amon-Ra St. Brown two-handed it to him. Falling to the ground. It was stumble bum last week. This is Sweet Georgia Brown or something for the Lions on a 42-yard catch and pitch and run. They'll work out of the shotgun without Kittle. Ball hash mark left. The Lions crowd the line. Samuel in motion. It's a short pitch to him at the 10. Picking his way 5. Ducking outside the numbers and into the pylon. Touchdown. Deebo Samuel Sr. in space. Gets the 49ers the lead right back at 7:40 to go in the third. It's 27-21 San Francisco, and the table tennis continues. Third down and 2. Goff's calling for it. He takes the snap. He hands it off. They'll run right with Gibbs. Into open space 20. 15-10. Streaking down the sideline. Kicking the pylon. Touchdown. A sonic boom from the Lions at 2:58 to go off a block from St. Brown. Detroit leads 40-28. Dynamite again from this offense.
You can only sit 6 guys. So who are those 6? Well, all right, who are the 6? And then the other guys that don't, was it fair to them that we're not using everything we've got? We flew out here, we prepared this way, we came out to win, and that's ultimately what it came to. And yeah, you do, you cross your fingers, nobody gets hurt. I mean, it's tough. We were fortunate, we got out. And now it's on to the next one.
Missouri.
3rd and 4 for the Missouri Tigers. 2.5 to go opening quarter, down 7. Missouri has it at the near hash. Brady Cook stands in the pocket, throws backside of the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! Field! Weiss Jr. An 8-yard touchdown reception. We're an extra point away from having this game tied. Caden Weegan back deep to receive. He's going to bring it out of his end zone. Comes to the near side right. 10, 15, 20, 25. He's up across the 30. Down the left sideline. He's got a lane. One blocker, 35, 40, 45. Caden Weegan to the house. 100-yard kickoff return for Iowa. His second special teams touchdown of the season.
Josh Manning on the jet sweep. Scores from 4 yards out. And now Missouri pulls within 4. A 56-yard attempt, which is his season long against Boston College. Just inside of a 57-yard attempt from the right hash out of the hole to Luke Bauer. With 4:42 to play. Good snap, good place. Kick is up. It is good. Blake Craig puts Missouri in front with 4:36 to play. With 1:10 to play. Angling left, he's going to be hit short. Missouri's going to get the football. He took the snap and tried to angle left, and Missouri was there to make the stop with 1:03 to play.
We've got Coach. Hey, congratulations, Coach. You've done it again. Take the lead for the first time at the right time the last 5 minutes. How do you describe this victory?
Yeah, I didn't do anything. Our players did it all, man. What a way to finish. finish, just resolve. Johnny Walker, Brady Cook, proud of them.
A little emotional, but Coach, this team has made this a habit down the stretch of the season.
Yeah.
Time and again, what is it about this group?
They just refuse to quit. They believe in each other, and just really proud of them.
We'll let you celebrate. Thank you, Coach.
MIZ.
Chiefs.
They'll be coming back in tomorrow, and I'll be able to talk to them about play times and all those things and how we're going to go about it. But for right now, I'm not going to address that today until I have a chance to talk to the team. And as far as the injuries go, we're really looking halfway decent here in that area. Not a lot to report to you from the last game, so everything's kind of status quo right now.
It's a new day with SSJ on Sports Radio 810 WHB, but it's not Steven today. I'll be filling in for Steven. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Maybe you heard me filling in over the last few days on the program. Quite a time change for me. I've done shows with Jake Gutierrez before, but not this early. He has. He does this every single day. I don't. So this is brand new for me.
First timer,
that's for sure.
Welcome to the mix.
So whatever coffee you need, whatever energy drink you need, might have two of them. At least I know I have to. I'm not much of a morning person, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have a great show for you lined up today. Coming up in about an hour, we're going to be joined by former Chief Mark Boerichter. He'll be with us from 7 to 8. Then at 8 o'clock, we're going to be joined by Gary Barnett talking some more football. Probably get the thoughts on that Missouri and Iowa Music City Bowl game. What a comeback for the Tigers. Both KU. I'm wearing a KU thing. My team did not play in a bowl game. Missouri, though, and K-State, they both have second-half come-from-behind wins, but Missouri was more recent there. Certainly we'll get his thoughts on that. And moving forward for the Tigers, what's next? A lot of production to replace for 2025, so we'll get his thoughts at 8 o'clock. At 8:30, another former Chief will be joining us in Bill Moss. We'll look ahead to that game against Denver. Chiefs will be resting the majority of their starters. Can't rest everybody. Actually talked to Trenton Green yesterday. There's 53 guys, so not every single backup can play. Some guys are going to have to get some snaps, and we'll be asking Bill which guys he thinks might need those extra snaps in a game against Denver. That won't impact anything for Kansas City, but certainly can impact a lot for the Denver Broncos. Then at 9 o'clock, we'll be joined by Jeff Chadia to close out the show. He'll be with us from 9 to 10. We'll certainly be talking Chiefs, but more so of a overall look at the NFL as we have just 1 week left in the regular season. Still some playoff spots up for grabs. Wild to think, though, on the NFC side, because we're going to be opening up talking some Monday Night Football, but more so what really does impress me about Kansas City for the third consecutive time putting themselves as a Super Bowl favorite. Maybe last year you don't say they were a Super Bowl favorite, but they were coming off a Super Bowl victory. And maybe I should go back further than just 3 years, because under Patrick Mahomes, this team has been a top 3 Super Bowl favorite every single season. But last night, as I'm watching that game, Detroit and San Francisco, number one, I'm starting to have my doubts that Detroit is going to be able to make a run to the Super Bowl because of how many injuries they've suffered, especially over the last few weeks. When you've got Brock Purdy and a ravaged 49ers team that really doesn't have much to play for, just march up and down the field, I'll be honest, I don't know if I care that much that you can score 40 against that defense. My concern is your defense going to be able to stop anybody come January? Buffalo proved in that game Detroit's defense couldn't even get off the field in 3 or 4 plays, and I don't mean that in a good way. I mean that Buffalo was scoring in 3 to 4 plays. It didn't matter what type of momentum that Detroit's defense had. Buffalo just marched up and down the field. And last night, even though the Lions won, and they did end up winning by double digits, 40-28 in the Bay Area, that was maybe the best the 49ers offense had looked since the first couple weeks of the season. I said 40-28. It was actually 40-34 backdoor.
Josh Dobbs.
That's right.
Had a late.
It was a late touchdown.
Meaningless touchdown.
Meaningless touchdown, but against Brock Purdy before he left with the injury, 40-28 was the score. So 34 points the 49ers put up. And the 49ers are going to wrap up their season next week. And it's going to lead me into this next point here. The 49ers are 6-10. And as we can remember last year, they were in the Super Bowl. They were the NFC champions. They took the Chiefs into overtime and lost on that walk-off touchdown where McCole Hardman brought it in and ran into the end zone. When the Chiefs have put together a season like this, they're 15-1. It was the first time they have won 15 games in the regular season. You just have to marvel at the fact that they're really doing, not just the three-peat talk, they're really doing what few teams are able to do. And that is continuously put together seasons like this when a giant red X is on your back. And I wanted to bring that up this morning because the 49ers, even with the key injuries they had, I mean, they certainly had a big red X on their back because they were the reigning NFC champions. They've won 6 games. Now, CMC not being available, that certainly has derailed their offense. Losing Brandon Ayuk in that game against Kansas City certainly hurt their offense. Deebo Samuel and the issues there. I mean, Ricky Pearsall got shot in the offseason. Their first-round pick. I mean, they've certainly been through the ringer when it comes to injuries and bad things happening. But I think as Chiefs fans, you can truly appreciate the greatness that has become this football franchise since Andy Reid came here. Because I do want to give a nod to those years under Alex Smith where they were just consistent. They weren't Super Bowl contenders, but they brought that level of consistency. And in the NFL, how many times have we seen it where a team wins 13, 14 games, they get to the Super Bowl, and then they immediately bottom out the next year? I mean, on the AFC side, the last time somebody not named the Chiefs was in the Super Bowl on the AFC side, it was Cincinnati. They haven't made the postseason since. And I understand we could sit here all morning and bring up the excuses and the reasonings as to why those teams fell short the following year, injuries being a big part of that. But injuries are a part of football. To me, I look at injuries in the same way I look at, players that aren't good. You kind of use this in baseball. If you've got a talented guy but he never stays healthy, well, then you're just not a reliable piece. You're not durable. That's a part of your skill set as a player. I believe it's the same thing as evaluating the skill of a team. If you've got a team that's loaded with talent, but they can never stay healthy at the same time, well, then it's just not a very good team to me. It's a team that's not that durable. But I also bring it up for this Chiefs team. How many injuries have they suffered this year? Key guys that went down, and yet you look back at the regular season, they lost one time. With the starters, I should say, because they could lose on Sunday with all the backups in. But they lost one time with the starters playing, and it was on the road to the number 2 seed in the AFC. That's the only time they lost with the starters this year. They lost Rashee Rice early on. They lost Hollywood Brown until the final few weeks, the final 3 weeks of the regular season. They had inconsistent left tackle play. They didn't have Charles Omenihu for the first portion of the year. Jalen Watson went down with an injury. They had to replace L'Jarius Sneed, who they traded away in the offseason. These things
Pacheco going down.
Pacheco going down. These things all get compiled together, and yet all they do is win football games. And as I was sitting there watching the game last night, it truly allowed me to appreciate the greatness year in and year out this team has. Whereas for years, if you were a Chiefs fan, you were hopeful to win on Sundays. Nowadays, they can play on Sunday, Saturday, Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday. It doesn't matter. But you are always expecting them to win. And it does have a little bit of a shift. When you're not only expecting them to win, you expect them to win by a lot. When you've reached that level of greatness, you look at any opponent on the schedule and think they should blow them out. Now, this team has just recently been able to blow out some opponents. But there have been the close calls. There have been the nail-biters. But every time you look up at the scoreboard at the end of the day or the end of the evening, they're on the winning side of it. It is a very hard thing to do, to have that X on your back and yet just keep winning. Some teams crumble under that pressure of being expected to win, expected to get back to the postseason, to get home field, to blow out teams. I mean, some teams just can't handle that type of pressure. I mean, we saw the Rams win a Super Bowl. They, kind of like the Bengals, haven't been able to stay healthy. They're going to be back in the postseason this go-round. We'll see what happens. But one Super Bowl, just winning one of them, is hard enough. You win back-to-back, I don't think I need to tell you how difficult that is. But then in going for a three-peat, to be 15-1 through 16 games in the regular season, you wrap up the number one seed before that final week when you've got Buffalo and Baltimore breathing down your neck. It's just much easier said than done. It's wildly impressive what this group has been able to accomplish. And you know what? Whether they win it this year or not, they're going to have that same type of expectation next year. They're going to have the same expectation the year after that. And you know what? I'm not going to count them out when it comes to getting back to the Super Bowl and winning it. You know, in sports, we talk about windows, competitive windows. And we've seen some great ones out there truly capitalize on windows. I've really only seen it, I would say, 4 times. And a couple of them I wasn't even alive for, if I can date myself a little bit. But the Bulls of the 90s, they capitalized on a competitive window. They won a lot with Michael Jordan. If I want to stay in the NBA, I mean, the Showtime Lakers capitalized. The Boston Celtics capitalized. The Warriors, with their dynastic run of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, capitalized on their competitive window. In the NFL, you think about some of those great dynasties. The 49ers, the Cowboys, the Patriots, capitalized on it. You talk about the New York Yankees in baseball, late 90s into the 2000s. They capitalized on a competitive window, but also for some of those teams, that competitive window was always. We really use that phrase when it comes to a small market team because they can't spend like the other big dogs out there. So they have to capitalize on a 5 or 6 year stretch where their players are young, they're affordable, they're controllable, and you win championships maybe 2 out of those 3 years or 3 out of those 5 years. You hope for that. In Kansas City now, I'm starting to wonder, when is that window truly going to close? And when will you admit that that window may be closed? Is it when Patrick Mahomes is done being the quarterback in Kansas City? Or what happens if the guy that replaces him is really talented as well? Are they always going to have those pieces in place? They're always going to be able to draft well. They're going to continuously be able to put up double-digit win seasons. They're going to be able to win the division. There will obviously be years they don't. We understand that. I mean, how many Patriots fans thought that in the years after Tom Brady, yeah, they'd have that one playoff appearance with Mac Jones. They went 10-6. Right now, they're on pace to have the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. It can change that quickly in this league if you don't have the pieces in place. But year in and year out, whether the Chiefs spent a lot in free agency, they made a big trade or not, they have the right pieces in place to be a Super Bowl winning team. You'll hear the national media out there say, oh, they're not as talented. They're vulnerable. This and well, come playoff time, they're not going to be able to keep up with Buffalo. Well, I just go back to last year where Buffalo seemed to have the better team, and the Chiefs went into Buffalo and won. Now, Baltimore had the better team last year. The Chiefs went into Baltimore and won that game. And this year, why would I have any reason to doubt they're going to do it again? And what's incredible about it, I'm not going to be that surprised if it does happen. Again, I'll knock on wood just so I don't jinx this team. But if they do win the AFC again, I don't think you'll be that surprised. I mean, they are the number 1 seed. They have home field. But we're talking about them getting to a 5th Super Bowl under Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Jake, before we hit a quick break, do we truly appreciate the greatness of what's going on right now? Or are we kind of just complacent almost in it right now, that we just expect this to happen every single year now?
Well, I think it's impossible to truly appreciate something until it's over. Just when you're in it. Look, the standard is the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
And to answer the question, when does that window close? Well, the window, you never know. The window's always open with Patrick Mahomes, and the window gets questioned when Andy Reid decides to step down. That's when the question mark. As long as you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, their window is open, and that is. And how do you know that? Because look at the track record. Mm-hmm. As Patrick Mahomes as a starter, he's never not been to the AFC Championship game. So that's the standard, right? And I would expect nothing less than the same this year. You know, honestly, like anything less than a Buffalo, Kansas City Chiefs AFC Championship game, I would be pretty shocked. Baltimore maybe slips in, but those 3 teams are head and shoulders above everybody else in the AFC. And I think that's the difference when you look at the NFC and the AFC, is the NFC is wide open. You mentioned the Lions, and the whole conversation started with the 49ers window, being shut.
Yeah.
They're going to have big questions. Purdy's on his third year. He's going into his 4th year. They're going to have to decide if they want to pay him, probably upwards of $60 million plus.
Yeah.
That's the going rate. That's what Dak got, and it's just next guy up is the highest paid quarterback in the league. We just seen that, Tua, and then Lawrence, and then go down the line. Now it's Dak. So that's the window for the 49ers are going to have to rebuild at some level.
Yeah.
And that's going to be an interesting thing. But they have the coach, and I think your window's open when you have the coach and quarterback.
You have that pairing, and maybe you could throw in GM as well. I mean,
sure.
When you've got all 3 on the same page, you're going to be able to win a lot of football games. But not every team is so blessed with that for a long period of time. I mean, can we say New England, they were all on the same page? I don't believe so, because Bill Belichick was running the majority of that.
Yeah, I mean they cycled through GMs, but it was Brady and Belichick, and that's what you look at, and so that Brady left, and that fell apart quickly. They couldn't find the replacement for Brady, and Belichick's now in North Carolina. And so you have to get it right. And you look at franchises like Green Bay, they're in it almost every year because they've gone from Favre to Rodgers, now Love, and they're a serious contender in the NFC. And so it is interesting, and injuries are, I think, outside of the quarterback, they're just a part of the game. But when it happens to the quarterback, that's something that you can't sustain.
Yeah,
that when you lose your quarterback, your starting quarterback, you typically can't sustain that. I think Jeff Hostetler is the only person that's been able to come in and Nick Foles to some level, but it's very rare that a backup quarterback is going to lead your team to the Super Bowl. And so it's like it is part of the game, and that's why last night was fascinating to see. As bad as the Lions have been decimated with injuries, and we heard the comments in the intro, Dan Campbell talking about, well, you can only sit 6 guys. Well, sit your most important guys.
Yes.
That game was basically meaningless. I get it. There was a revenge factor for the 49ers knocking them out of the NFC Championship last year. And that's just Dan Campbell's motto, but still it's like, how much would that team benefit if your 6 most important guys would have had a bye week?
Yep.
Going into the real game Sunday night against the Vikings. Like that, how big of an advantage would that have been? Now they're going to be on short rest. They're going to be flying. They're probably just recently got back to Detroit. They're flying in from the Bay Area last night. So you're already a day behind. It's like Dan Campbell, I get it, and he's fun. He's a fun soundbite, and he's always going for it on 4th down, and that's their mentality, and I'm all for it. It's entertaining. It's great for the NFL, but I don't think you can sustain that kind of attitude, and it's I think that's going to catch up. And like you said, like they've been the top team in the NFC all year long, and I don't think I'm picking them to get the Super Bowl right now. Because of that defense, and like you can only rest 6 guys. I get it. But that's 6 guys that are key. You can rest more than 6 guys. And I get it. It's not fair to the other. But that game was outside of if the Vikings and Lions tie now, the Lions will win the tiebreaker. But the chances of that happening are a long shot. So it's like, what's more important, having that advantage on the tiebreaker, on the tie, the game ends in a tie, you have the tiebreaker now, or resting your players and gearing them up. Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And yet I am a radio producer. I'm not a head coach of a football team that's 14-2. So the guy clearly knows what he's doing. But, it is part of the job to question, was that the best decision? And that's why we have guys like Bill Moss on at 8:30, and Mark Bowrichter will be in here at 7. We asked the guys that have actually been in the locker room and stepped on an NFL field. We asked those guys that question because, from my eye, it's like, man, how are you not prepping for Minnesota all last week? Knowing that, okay, this 49ers game, we have to be ready on some level, but how are you not gearing up for the number? Because the only way they do make it to the Super Bowl is if they have that 1 seed, in my opinion. Yeah. Right? If they go into as the 5th seed, like, good luck. Like, you're going to have to run a gambit with that team, injuries, and like, you get another week of rest if you get that bye. So it's so imperative, in my opinion, last night for them to be, okay, it doesn't really matter what happened. Let's go in there and not sustain any injuries. Let's rest our guys. Let's gear up for the real game. Let's gear up for the most important part of our season, which is taking on the Vikings on Sunday Night Football for the number 1 seed in the NFC. It's like, for him to just do what he did. Look, they got the win, and good for them. They got to avenge their loss in the NFC Championship, but it's like, what are you doing, man? If I'm a Lions fan, and Jeff Chadilla is. I'm curious. He is a Lions. He grew up a Lions fan. I can't say he's a Lions fan now, but that's his team he grew up rooting for. So I'm curious to see, like, if you're a Lions fan, she's like, are you kidding me? Like, they're lucky somebody didn't sustain an injury last night.
I think when you look at Detroit, and we'll hit a quick break here, but you think about what this coming Sunday night means. I mean, a 14-win football team is going to be going on the road in the wild card round. And for Detroit, a team that is now completely broken down by injuries, at least on the defensive side of the football. Offensively, they can put up a lot of points. We all know that.
Oh, yeah.
But all these injuries they've suffered, I mean, now to grind it out all the way through the final week of the regular season, and then what if you lose? If you lose, no break, no rest, immediately get on a flight, or maybe wait a day or two. You're flying to Tampa, an offense that can put up a lot of points, and you have to go now win on the road. You then may have to...
By the way, one of the two teams that has beaten you this year.
Yes, all the way back in week 2, I believe it was, in Detroit.
Yeah.
Then you may have to go on the road again, depending on how all the seeding goes. If you're the lowest remaining seed, you might have to go and play a number 1 seed in Minnesota. Now, I need to get the bracket in front of me and see all those teams and how they'd map out. But that's why everything matters in the final game of the regular season. Last night truly didn't, other than maybe morale, and we know how much of a morale guy Dan Campbell is. Maybe this team needed it. Maybe this team needed to avenge that loss from last year, even though it's a different meaning. But they needed a little something going into that game against Minnesota. 14-2 versus 14-2, Week 18. It'll be in Detroit right now per ESPN Analytics. The Lions have a 65% chance to win that football game and claim the number 1 seed. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back, talk a little bit more NFL on a new day with SSJ on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I think it was yesterday. It was the anniversary of when the Chiefs fired Romeo Crennel. It was the last time a head coach not named Andy Reid was at the helm. And as we all remember, in that 2012 season, the Chiefs went 2-14. Remember
give
losing.
him some kudos for being able to do that.
You remember a lot of losses. Every single Sunday. Lots of losses. Not a lot of primetime football games, a couple different quarterbacks, but 14 losses in one season. And now you think about only 23 regular season losses since that year. We are talking 12 years ago. The Chiefs had a 14-loss season. They have lost 23 regular season games with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback. Of course, not 23 games since 2012 because he had the Alex Smith era. But in the Patrick Mahomes era, 23 losses going back to his rookie season. That's how many times you felt bad in the regular season. You've had a frustrated Sunday, even pissed off going to bed that evening. Only 23 times. And since Andy Reid got here, you've never had a losing season. And I'll go one step further. There's never been a week that the Chiefs have gone into where the playoffs were not at least a possibility. And I want to highlight that because that final year or that final week in the regular season of that season where they missed the postseason, they had the Chargers on the regular season finale. Chase Daniels started that game. The Chiefs needed a lot to go right, but they were not mathematically eliminated until I believe their game was over. So you went into that game on a Sunday where the postseason was still a possibility. So since Andy Reid has been here, there has not been a week in which the postseason was completely out of the question. They weren't eliminated in week 14 or week 13. That level of consistency we're talking about. And even in the years of Alex Smith, there was a lot of winning. And there's been a lot of winning under Andy Reid. And Jake and I talked about it where, you know, this will be a different time. This will be a different era when Andy Reid decides to hang it up. We will have to evaluate just how open that window is because we have to see Patrick Mahomes with a different coach for the first time in his NFL career. But you'd have to have some faith that with Andy Reid's coaching tree, he would know the right guy to pick to replace him in Kansas City. But to live up to the amount of winning that's been done, I mean, you don't even second guess it every single week. You just have the belief they're going to win that football game. And if a lot of other teams were honest with themselves, I don't think they would tell you they feel confident every single week. But you ask the average Chiefs fan, do you think you can win this game? Well, as long as we have Patrick Mahomes, we can win. Even last year, when they went through their struggles, losing on Christmas Day to Aiden O'Connell, you just followed it up with the next week of, well, I still think we'll win with Patrick Mahomes. Or get us to the postseason, we can win with Patrick Mahomes. That's the type of consistency and the type of dominance that they have brought together. And now you enter into the postseason where you would think on paper, man, pulling off a three-peat, never been done. That doesn't feel like the odds are going to be on your side. Don't tell that to Chiefs fans, and more importantly, don't tell that to the Chiefs. They feel very confident they're going to be able to do this thing again. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Mark Borichter in studio on A New Day with SSJ on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 1
We are back here on a new day with SSJ on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, today filling in for Steven St. John. Jake Gutierrez is producing, and now joined in studio by Mark Bo-Richter. A little bit early, but I don't care. I mean, might as well. If you're
I'm on
here,
time.
You're
always
on time. What's that saying? What's that saying? If you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, you're forgotten.
That's exactly right.
There you go. You're a football player, so you probably had a coach tell you that a time or two.
Lombardi time.
It was the perfect time.
It's courtesy time. Let's put it that way.
There you go. Well, I'm glad we do have you in here a little bit early because we got lots to go over when it comes to the NFL. Let's start things last night because what Jake brought up to me was pretty interesting, and I do want to get your thoughts on this. The Lions playing their starters last night when that game didn't really impact them win or lose because of what was on the horizon. They have the Minnesota Vikings, both now 14-win teams. The winner, they're going to get the 1 seed home field advantage. The loser is going to have to be the 5 seed and have to go on the road in the wild card round. So did you agree with Dan Campbell's decision to go with all the starters there? I mean, he said in the postgame, hey, you can only rest 6 guys, but for a team that's so banged up, for a team that's so injured, to play everybody in a game like that, do you feel like it was the right move?
I don't know. I think you look at this a couple different ways, right? I heard you guys talking about this on my way in here this morning, but you can rest more than 6 guys. You just can't. I think the one, and you're going to see that this week, okay, with the, quote, standard elevations, right? Some injury designations that are going to happen this week. You're going to find that out, I think, as well. But obviously it's not like college football where you can just – we're going to play our second-string guys, right? Yeah. I think you know that. I think everybody else, for the most part, seems to know that. But the weird part about this is I buy his argument a little bit more if no matter what happens to you on this coming Sunday night against the Vikings, you become the 2 seed, right, type of thing.
Yeah.
Because then I sit there and go, you know, there's only 2 byes now, obviously, in the NFL playoffs. Then at least you're going to, if you're the 2 seed, you're going to have home field advantage, at least till the championship game type of thing, right? But with the way that the NFL has it, it doesn't matter, which is, you know, we've only run into this a couple times, it feels like, but it feels like there's been some recency to it where, you know, they're one of the best teams in the NFL, and they're going to end up being the 5 seed and have to go on the road and play a team that has a worse record than them, and quite a bit different of a worse record. I think that needs to change a little bit. I think the seedings, I'm still obviously in favor in the NFL of all the teams that win your division automatically making the playoffs and things like that. But I think there should be a little bit of seeding in there with some tiebreakers and everything else. In terms of him, you know, I think it's easy for us to sit on the outside and go, that game really didn't mean anything to you guys last night. There's more at stake, obviously, this week. Should you have rested some of those guys? Yeah, I think you can say that, but I also think he knows what his team needs, too. That's the other piece to this. And I think we all sit around a lot of times when I say we all fans, radio hosts, analysts, right, sit around and look at this, national people on these and go, okay, well, they should be resting, right? And then it comes into the equation, which I know we'll probably get to later on in the next hour, on the rest versus rust discussion. Yep. I think some of that's overblown. I think it depends on your team on things. And, you know, the Lions have been banged up. Everybody's been banged up at this point. So I guess where I go with this is we'll find out this week whether that was a good decision or not, right? Because if they go and win, they get the number 1 overall seed, we're going to say this is what he felt his team needed. If they go and the Vikings kick them all over the field on Sunday night, you're going to sit there. Also, and I believe this about the Chiefs, and we will get into this, I know, in the next hour, but, like, maybe they don't care, right, on things. Yep. You know you got a good team. Yes, there's a home field advantage to it throughout the entire playoffs, but maybe they also just believe, hey, we're better than the Vikings anyway, and we're going to go take care of business on Sunday.
Well, you look at kind of the difference, too. Like, Kansas City's coming off of 3 games in 11 days. You know, I think that the rest for them is vitally important because they had to have been run down after Christmas Day. Even though they put together their best game of the season, maybe the best game in the last 2 years, dominated from start to finish, they had to be worn out after that. Where maybe Detroit, they're going, we don't want to rest. Maybe Dan Campbell, as you brought up, goes to his players and said, hey, what would you guys like to do? We know this game doesn't matter. And they all said, we want to play. Jake brought up, that's where the NFC Championship game was last year.
Yeah.
They feel like maybe a little bit of revenge was due for them, and winning that game was great for confidence going into a matchup like this against the Minnesota Vikings. And I don't think it was the perfect game for them. I mean, their defense gave up 34 points to a Niners team that hasn't been good now for quite some time.
That's the one thing about the Lions, that their defense has been struggling, right?
Yes.
And a lot of it you can put on injuries with at Aiden Hutchinson and, losing some of the guys they have. And that might be part of it, too, of saying, hey, we want to try to go out here and play well defensively. Obviously, the Niners put up a lot of yards on them and a lot of points last night. But I do think it's a situation where you know your team best, And sometimes, we can talk about going forward on fourth downs and different things. And sometimes that mentality doesn't work for who your team is right at this particular moment in time. But, for whatever reason last night, he didn't rest those guys. So we'll find out here on Sunday.
Do you feel like the rest at this point in the season for Kansas City is going to do more for them than really rest could do for any other team because of those 3 games in 11 days, because of some of the injuries they've had to some key guys? Do you feel like they are that team that's benefiting the most from it, or is there somebody else out there you feel like might be benefiting from resting starters in Week 18?
Well, I think in the Chiefs' case, having the 3 games in 11 days is a difficult proposition, right, on things. 3 other teams had that exact same deal.
Yep.
On piece 2. Those are all going to be playoff teams also when you look at it. It's – I think it's easy for us to look at, I think, too, here in Kansas City because this is our team, right? The Chiefs are like, wow, it's so great if they have rest going into everything else, right, on things. I don't think it matters. I'll just say that. Where it matters is some guys that are really, truly nursing some injuries, right? Even Patrick Mahomes is an example with his ankle on stuff. I know he's been mobile enough and all those types of things, but getting that extra little bit of time to get yourself back and healthy, and it's more than just the 3 games in 11 days. It's the other 16 that you've played so far, right? Now 17 coming on Sunday. It's having the freshest legs you possibly can for the tournament. And we all saw a year ago when Travis Kelce didn't play the final week. Now, obviously, the playoff scenario is different, right, and everything else in terms of the seeding, but he just seemed a lot more re-energized, revitalized, everything else after just having that 1 week where he didn't play. Now we're talking about a lot more days off, right, for this team and organization, but I do think there's a tremendous advantage. I just think there's a tremendous advantage no matter what, going into the final week of the season with knowing exactly that you have home field advantage no matter what, right? Or even last year going into the last game against the Chargers where your seeding really wasn't going to improve or anything else. You're pretty much where you're going to be because then you can make all those decisions that you want to as a head coach, as an organization to say, okay, what do we need to get ourselves in the best possible position here to make a run at the Super Bowl?
All right, that's going to do it for hour number 1 of A New Day with SSJ on Sports Radio 810 WHB. But we still have another full hour to go. Mark Boerichter in studio. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, filling in for Steven St. John. Jake Gutierrez is producing this thing. Let's take that quick break, come back with hour number 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.